Welcome. I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Do you have a notepad handy? If not, I'll wait for you. Go ahead and grab one and grab a pen. As always, I want you to commit to jotting down some sort of action item that you will implement in your business today, even if it's forwarding this video to someone else in your business that may benefit from the concept. So today I wanted to talk to you about the unintended consequences of management, the unintended consequences of being the boss. So something happened recently, and I've observed this many times throughout my management career, and I think you may have this happen to you and be able to benefit from the realization that there's a way to mitigate this. And what happened was I was really excited about an idea, sort of an epiphany that I had. And I started making notes about it and brainstorming. And that's what's exciting about business. And then I wanted to share that with one of my number one guys so that he could share in my excitement. And in the back of my mind, at least, I thought, well, in the future, we will collaborate and we will sort of mull this over and push back and forth and sort of compromise, figure out and refine the idea. And we'll see what happens with it. We can implement it. Remember, it's all about implementation. So what I did was I put the gist of the idea, just the bullet points, the highlights in an email and sent it to him. And then it occurred to me that I have done this before. It sort of took a little time that passed, and I realized he's focused on what he needs to do at this moment. And that is something that I really recommend that you teach your people and create a culture within your organization that people focus on those things which are most important right now for the accomplishment of objectives. And of course, within the hierarchy of your organization, different people have different responsibilities. We're accountable for different things. That's how you set up management and the structure of your entire company, how you operate. And everybody needs to be focused on what's most important for the accomplishment of the objectives at their level, those things which fall under the umbrella of their responsibility. And so it occurred to me that I've seen this happen before, and that I may have inadvertently conveyed or communicated and assigned greater urgency and importance to the idea than I had intended. And I've seen that time and again throughout my career where I will share something. It could be verbally, it could be like I just said in the recent anecdote via email, or it could be something in a meeting. There's any way you communicate, you've got to be careful as the boss because people recognize your authority. And, we've talked about being audible ready. If you've got a really audible ready team, they may misunderstand the urgency or the importance of what you're communicating. And they may drop what they're doing and start working on a new project because you were so excited about it or whatever. And that's what I'm saying, is that you want to make sure that you clarify for your organization that they need to work on those things that are most important right now. And where further clarification is needed, they need to come to you. So the inadvertent conveying of urgency to, it may be a very important idea, something that you really want to implement, but it has to be put on the back burner. So we've talked before about how do we decide which ideas to implement today, what should we be working on today, all these kinds of things. And if your people are following that advice and they're focused on something, you don't want to distract them. So consider a couple of things. Number one, when I make a video like this, I'm trying to communicate a concept to you in management as a leader, but I want to make it dually functional that you can actually forward it to your team. And in doing so, you're saying to them, here's a culture we're trying to create. I want to let you know about a phenomenon that occurs in business. And by forwarding this to you, to your subordinates, when I say you, I'm talking in the third person as if you are communicating this to your team. By forwarding this to your team, you're communicating to them that you are giving them permission to follow what's in the video and to recognize that. So just to reiterate, what we're saying here is that sometimes the boss has unintended consequences of his communication and can convey urgency and importance to a task that can distract people from what they should be doing right now. That doesn't mean that your idea should go away. You should focus on what you do at your level. And you might be the visionary in your organization and be responsible for a lot of the idea orientation. But at minimum, when you do have an idea, it could be a great idea. And you should document it in some way. And there's nothing wrong with sharing it with your team, especially your key team members, that at some point you will discuss. So what you do is you recognize this by watching this video yourself. You send this video to your team and they recognize the concept and everybody sort of agrees, and you have this culture where, oh, wait a second here, the boss has communicated something, but we need to clarify whether or not this is a audible, where he's changing the instructions of what we should be working on right now, or is this something for the future? And I've just seen it happen time and again where I've been in a meeting or I've become privy to some communication between other team members, and someone will quote me or reference something I said in the past that changed their direction and changed their, it gave them guidance that I hadn't intended to communicate. I meant to say, here's a great idea or here's something, and maybe it's taken out of context, but really what so often happens is because of the respect that they have for you as the leader, they say, okay, well, you said you'd like that to happen, so I'm going to drop what I'm doing and I'm going to go start working on that. Now, ideally, besides sharing this video with your team so they would recognize this happens and be aware of it, that you would also create some sort of a mechanism, a better way of sort of a parking lot, some area where you can put ideas for you to analyze later, and you can plot them on that graph of practicality of implementation versus the benefits of implementation. And you would set up some sort of recurring meeting, some sort of, again, mechanism that your team can go back and visit the ideas, plot them, and decide what to work on, and everybody does that. And then what you do when you have these epiphanies is you put those into the parking lot. You document them so that you don't go away. You hate that feeling when you realize, oh man, I had this great idea last night, but I didn't write it down and I can't remember. I remember I was so excited about it. And so have a mechanism, have a place where you can document this stuff, but make sure that it doesn't inadvertently change the direction of people who you want focused on what they need to be doing right now. And that is something, as the boss, because you have that autonomy, that is something you have to really be careful, because nobody's sort of keeping you in check. And so what I recommend by sharing these videos, not just this one, but all the videos, is you're creating this culture. And by sharing it, you're saying to your team, here's something that I agree with in terms of management style and everything, but I know I'm also guilty of that. And maybe I don't put first things first sometimes. Maybe I have failed to align objectives or whatever. By forwarding this video, by sharing this concept with you, by you sharing this with your team, I always want to make sure I'm communicating in a way that you understand what I'm saying here. By sharing this with your team, you're creating that culture where they realize that you believe in that and that they too should believe in it. And what happens is they can begin to hold you accountable to that. They can remind you, and you're still the boss, but they can remind you, hey, you sent us that video that was about aligning objectives, and I take it that you really believe in that, and I wanted to let you know that my pay plan, for example, is encouraging me to do something that I'm not so sure you want it to encourage me to do. Or conversely, one of the performance metrics that you give me or you're failing to give me a performance metric that would encourage me to do X, Y, or Z. And so what I'm saying is you will have this culture created by sharing these concepts. So let's go back to today's concept, which is, be careful how you communicate as the boss, because it has a lot of gravity to it. There's a lot of importance assigned to what you say. I've done it myself with bosses I've had in the past, where they'll say something in a meeting, and it could be the inflection in their voice, the enthusiasm, or maybe they're in a bad mood and they said it very sternly or whatever, and I interpreted and assigned a particular urgency to that. Okay, well, we better do that. And then later found out, oh no, that wasn't that important to me at all, the person said. And I was like, oh boy, well, I kind of dropped what I was doing and what I maybe should have been working on. So realize this, recognize this tendency in yourself, share it with your team, and have them check you and check with you when they need that clarification. The other thing, and this is not exactly the point I wanted to make today, but it's very much related, is that you also need to be careful that you're not being hypocritical. You don't want to be one of these bosses that is, do as I say, not as I do. Once again, it can be something that you verbally communicate that can be misconstrued by your team in terms of urgency, but it also can be your actions and what you prioritize, or your communication style, and people start to emulate you or model you in their management style or in their day-to-day operations. And if you're being ineffective in how you communicate and how you operate, your people will also be ineffective. They'll think what's good for you is good for them. And so, like, let's say you're a victim of the tyranny of the urgent and you are constantly replying to email. They may think that you expect that they also are replying to email super fast, and that's a value that you have in your organization. So you have to clarify. But more than that, as the boss, you need to check yourself and you need to look at, what example am I setting? What am I saying? And are our objectives all in alignment? Am I practicing what I preach? And if you're not, make a note, sort of brainstorm, do that self-analysis, the introspection, and ask yourself, what things may I be inadvertently communicating to my team that I don't want to, and it's causing problems? All of these things come back down to problems, what I've recognized in organizations that I've been a part of throughout the years. So just to sort of summarize or go back, first of all, take a look at, do you have a mechanism in place through which you can document and then plan and strategize for the best ideas and the implementation of the best ideas in your organization? If not, put that in place and then start using that. Make sure that you are not inadvertently communicating enthusiasm for a project. Well, enthusiasm is fine. Inadvertently communicating a false sense of urgency on a task that distracts people from what you need them to do today. And make sure that you're not being hypocritical. Make sure that you lead by example. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do the very things that you're delegating to other people, of course, but it means that the underlying effectiveness of how you operate should be a good example for your people. And then lastly, make sure that you use the content within these videos to not only learn from yourself and sort of maybe glean some sort of inspiration and ideas to implement, but you're sharing them with your team, because not only will they learn from it, they will also get the message, well, the boss shared this with me, so he shares this value, and you will start to create this culture where they start to hold you accountable, which is what you want. It's good. I love it when someone in my organization holds me accountable to upholding something that I truly believe in, one of my values. And maybe I've strayed a little bit, or I didn't realize, because we're not so self-aware all the time. And I didn't realize that I'm conveying a different message entirely, or I'm not upholding a value that we should have as an organization. And when my team points that out to me, you want to have that permission, you want to have that culture, and you say to them, Thank you very much. I appreciate you pointing that out. I'm going to, look at that, and I'm going to improve. So that's where we'll leave it today. I hope you got something of this. Share this video with anyone in your organization or another organization that you think will benefit from this. And in the comments, just put something down there that we can all learn from. We have to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.